How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. Picture yourself at a banquet, surrounded by colleagues and friends. The plates have been cleared, coffee's being poured, and there's a comfortable buzz of conversation filling the room. Then the toastmaster stands, taps his glass, and starts speaking. He thanks a few people, cracks a light-hearted joke, and then he calls your name. "We have a distinguished guest with us tonight," he announces, "and I'd like to ask them to say a few words." Applause erupts. Every single person turns to look at you. Your heart, which was beating perfectly normally a second ago, suddenly feels like it's trying to escape through your ribcage. Your palms turn slick with sweat. Your mind, once sharp and clear, goes completely, utterly blank. What do? For one man, a physician named Dr. Curtis, this exact nightmare actually happened. He was at a dinner honoring a baseball team he loved. When the toastmaster unexpectedly called his name, sheer panic seized him. Here's the thing. He knew the subject. He could have talked about health all night long to the person sitting beside him, but to an entire audience, his thoughts just vanished. He was so overwhelmed with fear and humiliation that he simply stood up, turned his back on his friends, and walked silently out of the room. This paralyzing fear, this feeling of being tongue-tied and exposed, is one of the most common fears in the world. And for so many people, it's a quiet tragedy, an invisible barrier that holds them back from sharing their ideas, from leading, from truly connecting with others. But here's the good news. There's a way to conquer it, not through some magical trick, but with a set of timeless, surprisingly simple principles. This is where Dale Carnegie comes in. Long before he wrote his legendary book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he was just a young man from Missouri with a burning desire to overcome his own crippling fear of public speaking. He studied the greats, practiced relentlessly, and eventually developed a system so effective that it's now helped millions of people find their voice. The book we're exploring today, How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking, is the very foundation of his life's work. It's a masterclass, born from decades of teaching everyday business people, just like Dr. Curtis, how to transform their greatest fear into their greatest strength. By the end of our time together today, you won't just have a book summary. You'll understand the fundamental keys to unlocking a new level of self-assurance. And here's the thing. This journey isn't just about giving speeches. It's about discovering the confidence that's already inside you, waiting to be unleashed. Confidence that can change how you navigate every meeting, every conversation, and every challenge you'll ever face. So let's dive in. Every great journey begins with a single, crucial step. And on the path to becoming a confident speaker, that first step is understanding a universal truth. You are absolutely not alone in your fear. In fact, the fear of public speaking is so common, so deeply wired into our nature, that even the most famous orators in history felt it. William Jennings Bryan, a man who could sway thousands with his voice, admitted that in his first attempts, his knees literally knocked together. Mark Twain confessed that the first time he stood up to lecture, his mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Even Abraham Lincoln, whose words would eventually echo through the ages, was described by his law partner as awkward and shy in his opening moments, his voice shrill and piping before he found his rhythm. These men weren't born fearless. They were ordinary people who felt the same flutter of anxiety, the same self-consciousness that we all do. The difference? They didn't let it stop them. They learned that this fear wasn't a wall, it was a door. And Dale Carnegie gives us 4 keys to unlock it. The first key is the most important of all. Start with a strong and persistent desire. This isn't about casual interest. It's about cultivating a white-hot, burning need for this skill. Carnegie understood that without a powerful why, you'll never endure the how. He urges you to think deeply about the rewards. What would this ability actually mean for you? Think about the leadership it could give you. Think about the influence you could have in your community or your career. Think about the pure satisfaction that comes from standing before a group of people and making them think your thoughts after you. It gives you a feeling of strength, of personal power, that few other accomplishments can match. To secure this kind of commitment, Carnegie tells a story about Julius Caesar. When Caesar landed his legions on the shores of England to conquer it, he did something extraordinary. He had his men stand on the chalk cliffs of Dover and watch as every single ship they'd arrived in was set on fire. With the last link to home gone, the last means of retreat burned to ashes, there was only one path forward: advance and conquer. You need to do the same with your ambition. Metaphorically, of course. Burn the ships of retreat. Commit so fully to this goal that turning back isn't even an option. Your desire is the fuel for the entire journey. The second key is to know thoroughly what you're going to talk about. This seems obvious, right? Yet it's the most common trap for beginners. A speaker who's unprepared is like a blind person leading the blind. They have every right to feel nervous and ashamed. But Carnegie's definition of preparation is where the real wisdom lies. It's not about memorizing a script. It's definitely not about borrowing someone else's thoughts from an article you read on the subway an hour before your talk. He tells a story about a banker in his course, a Mr. Jackson, who tried exactly that approach. He read an article from Forbes magazine and then tried to regurgitate it to the class. The result? A disaster. His delivery was hollow, unconvincing, and lifeless, because the ideas weren't his. He hadn't digested them. He hadn't wrestled with them. There was plenty of Forbes magazine in the talk, but almost none of Mr. Jackson. Carnegie's advice was simple. Take the article as a starting point, but now make it your own. Think about it for a week. Do you agree with the author? If so, why? What experiences from your own life support these ideas? If you disagree, even better. Tell us why. Mr. Jackson took the advice. He spent the next week letting the speech grow. An idea would come to him while reading the newspaper. An illustration would pop into his mind while talking with a friend. The subject deepened and expanded in his mind day by day. When he spoke again, the difference was astounding. He wasn't just repeating words. He was delivering a message forged in his own mind, currency minted from his own experience. He spoke with passion and conviction. A well-prepared speech, Carnegie says, is already 9/10 delivered. This is the method of the masters. Think about Abraham Lincoln. How did he prepare his speeches? He let them simmer. He would brood over an idea for weeks, thinking about it as he walked to the grocery store or did his daily chores. He jotted down thoughts on scraps of paper, bits of paper bags, old envelopes, and stuffed them into his tall hat. Over time, these fragments would grow and connect, until he was ready to sit down and weave them into a coherent whole. His most famous speech, the Gettysburg Address, was the product of this same deep, reflective process. He didn't just scribble it down on the train, as legend would have it. He worked on it for days, writing and rewriting, reading it aloud to his cabinet members for feedback, polishing it until the very morning he delivered it. He was giving his speech what he called another lick. This kind of preparation, this slow, thoughtful gathering of your own ideas, convictions, and stories, is what builds an unshakable foundation. It creates what Carnegie calls reserve power. He tells the story of the great botanist Luther Burbank, who would often produce 1,000,000 plant specimens just to find one or two superlatively good ones, and then destroy all the inferior ones. A speech should be prepared in the same spirit. Assemble 100 thoughts and discard 90. Gather far more material than you could ever possibly use. That deep reservoir of knowledge will give you a sureness of touch, a confidence that you simply cannot fake. The things you know but don't say will lend force and color to the few things you do say. The third key is to act confident. This might sound like simple advice, but it's rooted in a profound psychological truth, articulated by one of the most famous psychologists, Professor William James. James wrote that while we often think action follows feeling, the two actually go together. And by regulating the action, which is under our direct control, we can indirectly regulate the feeling, which isn't. In other words, to feel brave, you need to act as if you are brave. To develop courage when facing an audience, you need to act as if you already have it. Before you even step out to speak, take a few deep breaths. The increased oxygen will buoy you up. Then, no matter how much your heart is pounding, stride forth briskly. Stand tall, look your audience directly in the eyes, and begin speaking as if every single one of them owes you money. Imagine they've gathered there to beg you for an extension of credit. The psychological effect on you will be immense. Theodore Roosevelt, a man who became the very symbol of courage, wasn't born that way. He was a sickly, awkward boy, nervous and distrustful of his own abilities. He confessed that he conquered his fear of everything from grizzly bears to gunfighters by consciously acting as if he wasn't afraid. Eventually, the pretense became reality. He became fearless by sheer practice of acting fearless when he didn't feel it. You can do the same. Take the offensive against your fears. Go out to meet them and conquer them with sheer boldness. And finally, we arrive at the fourth key, which Carnegie says is emphatically the most important of all. Practice, practice, practice. If you forget everything else, remember this. The first way, the last way, the never-failing way to develop self-confidence in speaking is simply to speak. It all comes down to this one essential: practice. Fear, as Carnegie explains, is born of ignorance and uncertainty. It's the result of a lack of confidence. And what causes that lack of confidence? Not knowing what you can really do. And you'll never know what you can do until you have a record of successful experience behind you. You can't learn to swim by reading a book about it. You have to get in the water. In the same way, you cannot learn to speak by just reading this book. You need to choose a subject, construct a short talk, and give it. Practice it alone, then deliver it to a friend, a family member, or a small group. With each successful attempt, you're building evidence for your own competence. And as that evidence mounts, your fears will begin to melt away, like morning mist under summer sunshine. This journey from fear to confidence isn't a straight line. You won't improve at a steady, gradual pace. Carnegie wisely points to a psychological phenomenon that all learners experience: plateaus in the curve of learning. You'll advance in sudden jerks and starts. Then you might remain stationary for a while, feeling like you're making no progress at all. You might even feel like you're slipping backward. This is the moment of greatest danger. This is when the weak give up. But those with grit, those who persist, will find that suddenly, almost overnight, they break through. They lift off the plateau like an airplane and find themselves at a whole new level of skill and confidence. The key is to persevere through those frustrating plateaus, knowing that a breakthrough is just on the other side. So, you've cultivated your desire, you've prepared your own thoughts, you're acting with confidence, and you're practicing relentlessly. Now, how do you actually deliver your message in a way that genuinely connects with people? This brings us to the great secret of delivery. For centuries, public speaking was shrouded in mysterious rules about elocution and oratory, with rigid instructions on gestures and tone. Carnegie sweeps all of that away. The secret, he says, is beautifully simple. Good delivery is merely enlarged conversation. That's it. You don't need to become a different person on stage. You simply need to be yourself, but magnified. A modern audience, whether it's 15 people in a boardroom or 1,000 under a tent, wants the speaker to talk to them with the same directness and sincerity they would use in a one-on-one chat. Think about it this way. What is a meeting, after all, but a collection of individuals? The same methods that are successful with one person will be successful with them collectively. So talk to them, look at them, connect with them. Imagine you've picked out one person in the back row, the dullest-looking character you can find, and talk directly to them. Forget everyone else is there. Imagine they've asked you a question, and you're simply answering it. This simple mental shift will instantly make your delivery more natural, more conversational, and more direct. Of course, enlarged is a key part of the equation. You need to use more energy, more volume, and more vitality than you would in a private conversation. A statue on top of a building must be of heroic size to appear lifelike to an observer on the ground. Similarly, your natural tones of eloquence must be enlarged to reach the back of the room. The most important part of this naturalness is being authentically you. Henry Ford once said, "All Fords are exactly alike, but no two men are just alike." Your individuality is your most precious possession as a speaker. Don't try to imitate someone else. Sir Oliver Lodge, the great scientist, spoke differently from Lloyd George, the fiery politician, because they were different men. Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas, who engaged in the most famous debates in American history, were polar opposites. Lincoln was tall, awkward, and told stories. Douglas was short, graceful, and rarely smiled. If either had tried to imitate the other, he would have failed miserably. They were powerful because they had the courage to be themselves. Cherish your own unique style. Develop it. It's your only real claim to importance. To help you find this natural enlarged style, Carnegie identifies 4 things we all do unconsciously in earnest conversation, but often forget the moment we face an audience. First, we stress the important words in a sentence and hurry over the unimportant ones. In conversation, certain words tower up like skyscrapers, giving emphasis and meaning. But a nervous speaker often gives every word the same weight, creating a monotonous, flat delivery. Second, in natural talk we change our pitch. Our voices flow up and down the scale, shifting constantly, like the face of the sea. But before an audience, that same voice can become as flat and dull as a desert highway. Third, we vary our rate of speaking. We speed up over simple ideas and slow down to let important ones sink in. Lincoln was a master of this. He would rush through several words, then come to the one he wished to emphasize, and let his voice linger on it, driving the point home. And fourth, the most powerful tool of all, we pause. A pause before or after an important idea has the same effect as a sudden noise. It commands attention. It gives your listeners a moment to catch up, to digest what you've said. It creates suspense. Silence, when used judiciously, is more eloquent than words. As you practice, listen to yourself. Are you doing these 4 things naturally? If not, don't try to force them like a mechanical robot. Instead, get more of your heart into your talks. Sincerity and enthusiasm burn away the barriers of artificiality. When you're truly passionate about your message, your real self comes to the surface, and these techniques of good delivery will emerge on their own. But your message isn't just carried by your voice, it's carried by your entire being, your personality, and your presence. The Carnegie Institute of Technology once conducted tests on prominent business leaders and declared that personality contributes more to success than superior intelligence. This is doubly true for a speaker. So how do you make the most of your personality on stage? Carnegie offers some wonderfully practical advice. First, go before your audience rested. A tired speaker is never magnetic. Don't make the common mistake of frantically preparing at the last minute. And eat sparingly before you speak. You can't have your brain competing with your stomach for blood flow. Dress neatly and attractively. The consciousness of being well-groomed heightens your own self-respect and confidence. Think of General Grant's deep regret that he was wearing a simple private's uniform when he met the immaculately attired General Lee for the surrender at Appomattox. He felt the disharmony of that moment for the rest of his life. Your appearance sends a message before you ever say a word. And when you do walk out, smile. Come before your hearers with an attitude that says you're glad to be there. Like begets like, Carnegie says. If you're interested in your audience, they're likely to be interested in you. He also shares a fascinating piece of audience psychology. Crowd your audience together. A small group scattered throughout a large hall is one of the hardest audiences to move. The empty chairs and open spaces dampen enthusiasm. But pack that same number of people into a small room, and a kind of group energy takes hold. Laughter becomes more infectious, applause more spontaneous. A person in a crowd loses some of their individuality and is swayed more easily by the emotion of the group. Just as important as your own presence is the environment on the platform. Keep it clean and uncluttered. Avoid distractions. Don't have other guests sitting behind you, shifting in their chairs. An audience cannot resist the temptation to look at moving objects. Your job is to be the single, compelling focus of their attention. And what about gestures? Here, Carnegie's advice is revolutionary for his time. He tells of his first public speaking lesson, where he was drilled on absurdly artificial, graceful gestures, a whole system of mechanical movements that were completely devoid of genuine feeling. He dismisses this entire approach. 9/10 of what's been written on gestures, he says, is a waste of paper. Real gestures aren't something you put on like a dinner jacket. They're an outward expression of an inward condition. The only gestures worth anything are those that are born on the spur of the moment, driven by the force of your conviction. They're as personal as your toothbrush. Don't learn gestures from a book. Get them out of your own heart, out of your own mind, out of your desire to make someone else see what you see. If you're so wrapped up in what you have to say that you forget yourself, your gestures will take care of themselves. Now, we come to the most strategic moments of any talk, the beginning and the end. Actors have a saying, "By their entrances and their exits shall ye know them." The same is true for speakers. The opening is your moment of maximum opportunity. Your audience's minds are fresh and easy to impress. You need to seize their attention immediately, in your very first sentence. Yet, this is where most novices make one of two disastrous mistakes. The first is the so-called humorous story. The speaker feels they ought to be funny, so they tell a stale joke that doesn't land. The audience offers a few pity chuckles, and the entire talk begins under a cloud of awkwardness. Remember, humor is a hair-trigger affair. It's seldom the story itself that's funny. It's the way it's told. And unless you have a rare gift for it, it's best to avoid manufactured jokes. The second blunder is the apology. "I'm no speaker. I'm not really prepared. I don't have much to say." Don't do it. If you're not prepared, the audience will discover it soon enough. Why call their attention to it? It's an insult to them, suggesting you didn't think they were worth preparing for. So, what should you do instead? Carnegie offers several powerful techniques to create an arresting opening. You can arouse curiosity. Start with a teaser, an effect that makes people anxious to hear the cause. Mr. Howell Healy began a talk with this line. 82 years ago, there was published in London a little volume, a story which was destined to become immortal. Many people have called it the greatest little book in the world. The audience is immediately hooked. What is this book? They're held in suspense until he reveals it. Dickens, A Christmas Carol. You can tell a story. We're all wired to love narratives. Russell Conwell delivered his famous lecture, quote, Acres of Diamonds, over 6,000 times. How did this incredibly popular talk begin? In 1870, we went down the Tigris River. We hired a guide at Baghdad to show us Persepolis, Nineveh, and Babylon. And he's off, with a story. It's an almost foolproof way to capture attention. You can begin with a specific illustration. The average mind finds it difficult to follow abstract statements. Illustrations are far easier. Open with a concrete example, arouse interest, and then follow with your general remarks. You can ask a question. This is one of the simplest and surest ways to unlock the minds of your audience and get them thinking with you. You can use a striking quotation from a famous person. The words of an eminent individual always have attention value. Or, perhaps most effectively, you can tie your topic directly to the vital interests of your audience. Show them how your subject affects their business, their health, their family, their wallets. People are stupendously and eternally interested in themselves. If you talk about a problem in their terms, you'll have their undivided attention. Just as you must plan your first words, you must meticulously plan your last. The close is the most strategic point in a speech. The final words you utter are the ones most likely to remain ringing in your listeners' ears. Don't just trail off by saying, "Well, that's about all I have to say, so I guess I'll stop." That's not an ending. It's a mistake. Your ending should be planned and rehearsed. Know exactly what ideas you're going to close with. Carnegie suggests 7 effective ways to end a talk. First, summarize your main points. In a few sentences, bring everything together, reminding the audience of the key takeaways. Second, appeal for action. If the purpose of your talk is to get something done, make your appeal clear, direct, and heartfelt. Third, pay the audience a sincere compliment. Leave them feeling pleased and optimistic. But it must be genuine. Insincere flattery will always ring false. Fourth, raise a laugh. As George Cohan said, always leave them laughing. A light, humorous close can be very effective if it fits the tone of your talk. Fifth, quote a fitting verse of poetry. A beautiful piece of poetry can give your closing dignity, flavor, and individuality. Sixth, use a biblical quotation. For centuries, speakers have used the power and majesty of Scripture to give their final words profound weight. And seventh, build up to a climax. This is a popular and powerful way of ending, where you arrange your thoughts in ascending order of importance, with each sentence growing stronger than the last, culminating in your most powerful statement. Lincoln's second inaugural address is a masterclass in this, ending with the immortal words, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." And finally, through all of this, through your preparation, your delivery, your opening and closing, one final principle must shine through. You must be clear and you must be interesting. To be clear, use comparisons. Describe the unknown in terms of the known, just as Jesus used parables about farming and fishing to explain the kingdom of heaven. Avoid technical jargon and appeal to the sense of sight. Use picture-building words. Don't just say a man was stubborn. Say his teachers flogged him 15 times in a single morning. One is abstract. The other is a concrete picture we can't forget. To be interesting, remember what people are most interested in: themselves and stories about other people. Sprinkle your talks with human interest stories, with tales of struggle and triumph. This is the glorified gossip that holds our attention. Talk about people, and you'll never be dull. Ultimately, however, all these techniques are just tools. The real magic, the element that ties everything together, is your own spirit. Interest is contagious. Enthusiasm is infectious. If you're genuinely excited about your subject, if you feel your message deeply and are in real earnest about it, your audience will feel it too. You can follow all the rules in the book, but if your talk lacks heart, it will fall flat. But if you have a bad case of interest yourself, your listeners are almost sure to catch it. That is the final and most profound secret of all. As we reflect on Dale Carnegie's wisdom, it becomes clear that How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking isn't really a book about public speaking at all. Not at its core. At its heart, it's a manual for courage. It's a guide to stepping out from the shadows of self-doubt and into the light of your own potential. The stage is just a training ground. The real arena is life itself. The most powerful lesson, I believe, is Carnegie's relentless focus on authenticity. In a world that often encourages us to be someone we're not, he tells us that our greatest power lies in being more fully ourselves. Don't imitate. Don't follow rigid rules. Find your own voice, your own stories, your own passions, and share them with the world. The goal isn't to become a flawless orator. It's to become a genuine human being who can connect with other human beings. This book reminds us that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's built. It's built through desire, through diligent preparation, through the courage to act even when you're afraid, and through the persistence to practice, fail, and practice again. It's a process, a journey, and every small step forward matters. The story of Dr. Curtis, who fled a banquet in shame, doesn't end there. After taking Carnegie's course, he became such a powerful speaker that he was invited to give political speeches across New York City. His greatest humiliation became the catalyst for his greatest growth. That potential for transformation exists in all of us. The principles in this book are as relevant today as they were a century ago, because they speak to a fundamental human need: the need to be heard, to be understood, and to connect. So how can you start applying these ideas today? Here are a few simple actions you can take. First, try the act as if challenge. For just one day, consciously decide to act with more confidence than you feel. When you walk into a room, stand a little taller. When you speak to someone, make direct eye contact. Speak a little more slowly, a little more clearly. You're not being fake, you're practicing the person you want to become. Just notice how this small shift in your actions begins to change how you feel. Second, embrace the Lincoln method of preparation. The next time you have an important meeting, or even just a significant conversation, don't wait until the last minute. Choose your one core message a day or two in advance. Let it simmer in your mind. Think about it during quiet moments. Jot down any ideas that come to you. You'll be amazed at how much clearer and more powerful your thoughts become when you give them time to grow. Finally, become a story collector. Your life is filled with compelling stories, but you probably don't notice them. Start a note on your phone. Whenever something interesting, funny, or challenging happens, write down a sentence or two about it. This is your personal reservoir of material. These are the stories that will make your future talks and your conversations come alive. The biggest speeches we give aren't always on a stage in front of hundreds of people. More often, they happen in quiet moments. When we need to stand up for an idea at work, when we need to express our feelings to someone we love, or when we simply need to advocate for ourselves. The techniques in this book are the tools, but the courage to use them, that comes from your own resolution to begin. That was a summary of How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. We've touched on the core principles today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found on the journey itself. The true magic happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is a signpost, designed to help you decide if this is a path worth walking. If anything we've discussed today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and your place in the world. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. It tells us we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.